And the results are obvious. Christian voters helped change the direction of our country. The 2018 midterm elections are equally important. Judges confirmed by the incoming Senate will affect this country for decades. Look up your registration deadline and make sure you are registered to vote. And then on Election Day, make sure to vote. And be an informed voter. Visit afaaction.net to get the AFA Action Voter Guide.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Bryan Fisher.
And good Friday to you. Fred Jackson sitting in for Bryan Fisher today. Bryan will be back from vacation on Monday, but in the meantime, we'll do our best to look after the shop for him on this Friday. Another busy, busy day. All right. I need to talk to you if you're over 45 or 50 or so. You may remember on Sunday nights, it was a way a lot of people spent Sunday evenings after church when I was growing up. The Ed Sullivan Show. All right, the Ed Sullivan Show. I don't know what network is on. I think it was NBC. But people that got home from church, whatever they're doing on Sunday, and you had to watch the Ed Sullivan Show. It was a big variety show back then. It's famous for introducing the Beatles to the United States audience, et cetera, et cetera. I want to play you how he used to introduce the program, to introduce what we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes. Here's Ed Sullivan.
We have a big show for you tonight, and we're going to kick it off with a lot of comedy.
Yeah, that was Ed Sullivan, and of course, I do a poor interpretation or rendition of Ed Sullivan. Really big show. That's what he used to say. And of course, he had all kinds of guests, as I say, the Beatles and others, and they were often introduced. But I thought about the Ed Sullivan intro this week when I was watching what was happening in Washington, D.C., with the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. Brett Kavanaugh being the president's latest nominee to the Supreme Court. And I know Fox TV News for sure was covering pretty well wall to wall. But what I'm talking about, and Ed Sullivan talks about comedy, is what we heard from 2 or 3 of the main speakers for the Democratic Party who sit on that Judiciary Committee. And yesterday we talked a bit about Cory Booker. Cory Booker is a Democrat senator from New Jersey who really wants to be the next president of the United States. Now, the breaking news that we had for you yesterday was that he opened, I think it was the afternoon part of the hearings yesterday, you may remember this, by saying he was willing to break Senate rules because he was going to reveal to the American public some of the confidential memos that senators had been given, Republicans and Democrats, leading into the start of this hearing, on some memos, some things that Judge Kavanaugh wrote while he was working for the Bush administration from 2001 to 2006. Now, allegedly, according to Senator Booker, these memos basically painted Kavanaugh has in favor of racial profiling. But the big issue was, he said, I'm willing to be disciplined, thrown out of the Senate, whatever, for disobeying Senate rules by revealing these memos. Well, what we found out, if you're listening to yesterday's program, was, in reality, the memos had been declassified the night before, and he knew that, but he was making this big show for the American public. By the way, I mentioned he plans to run for president for the Democrats in 2020. He's been raising money, using his show at this hearing to raise money for running for president in 2020. Well, Senator Booker has these hearings kind of wrapped to a close last night as far as the questions to Judge Kavanaugh. He decided on another tactic. He was going to try to get Judge Kavanaugh to say where he stands on homosexual marriage. It's cut number 4.
And I think that there's a lot of folks who have real concerns that if you get on the court, folks who are married right now really have a fear that they will not be able to continue those marital bonds. And we still have a country where if you post your Facebook pictures up of your marriage to someone of the same sex, we still have a majority of states where that employer of yours finds out that you had a gay marriage and that you're gay. The majority of American states, you can fire somebody because they're gay. And I guess you're not willing to tell me whether you personally, morally now, think that that's right or wrong.
So, Senator, I'm a judge, and therefore, with the cases that you're well aware of, I know, pending in the courts about the scope of the civil rights laws, the employment discrimination laws, of course, Congress could always make those clear.
Okay.
And that
that's what I want to get to the point, that you won't give me a moral answer because of the pending cases, and I've heard that.
Well, right, and I don't want to in any way.
But so maybe I can ask you about your concern when you were in the Bush White House. Did you have any involvement in Bush's effort to support a constitutional amendment to ban same-sex marriage?
So, Senator, when I was in the White House, that was part of the something that he talked about. Of course, at that point in time,
did you express an opinion about it then yourself?
Yeah, as staff secretary, things related to that speeches he gave would have crossed my desk, as I've discussed before.
I'm not privy to your documents at that time.
Right.
Did you ever express your opinions? Did you ever express your opinions about same-sex marriage?
So that conversation went on, but Judge Kavanaugh used and employed the same response as other nominees to the United States Supreme Court have done in the past, nominees that President Barack Obama put forward, President Bush, Clinton, and others. When you're up for a job before the United States Supreme Court, you are not going to express opinions openly during these hearings about cases that might come before you, because that would prejudice your point and you would have to recuse yourself from the court. And so he tried to nail him down on that. But it was another example of the priorities of the Democrats who were sitting on that. Try to get him nailed down on where he stands on homosexual marriage. And then there was Senator Feinstein of California, tried to nail him down as to where he stands on the issue of abortion. And he said over and over and over again, precedents have been put in place with regards to abortion. But that's all the Democrats had. Now, it was interesting. This went on and on yesterday, this kind of back and forth. Cory Booker and also Kamala Harris doing the same kind of thing. She's another Democrat senator. She's from California. She would also like to be the next president of the United States. She was using the same kind of tactics with regards to asking Judge Kavanaugh, do you remember having conversations with a lawyer from a legal firm here in Washington, D.C. about the Mueller investigation? And that went on and on and on for a while. And we found out there are over 300 lawyers who work for that particular firm in Washington, D.C., and the judge couldn't honestly remember because he doesn't know everybody who works there. And so this morning on Fox and Friends, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, the Republican who also sits on the committee, was asked about all this circus this week in the Judiciary Committee.
One thing to learn from this hearing, if you're going to use a document to impeach a witness, read it. The document they used to try to accuse him of racial profiling, if you read the thing, he was against racial profiling. If you're willing to get kicked out of the Senate to make sure documents are going to be produced, make sure they haven't already been produced. The one that bothered me the most, and I like Senator Harris, is to insinuate that Judge Kavanaugh did something wrong by talking to some unnamed person at a 300-person law firm. What she tried to do for the country is to suggest that Judge Kavanaugh had an inappropriate conversation with somebody in a 300-person law firm, but she would never tell him who, and he said, I don't know who you're talking about, and nothing came of it. That kind of line of questioning, I think, is inappropriate. If you don't like him, vote no, but don't suggest that this man is anything other than honest.
You know, at one point, Senator Graham, during that interview this morning, basically said the hearing was to resume today, and Judge Kavanaugh wasn't there. It was just people giving testimony on either side. But he left the interview at Fox this morning saying, I'm rejoining the clown car. And that just about wraps it up, folks, for that hearing this week. Judge Kavanaugh going to get confirmed? I think so. I don't think, and even the mainstream media is admitting nothing happened this week that's going to change the minds of people. It will likely be a Republican vote for, Democrats all against. We'll wait and see. Hey, much more. The president was in Billings, Montana last night. He was talking about the goings-on in Washington. We'll have that when we come back here on Focal Point for a Friday.
Maybe you've been hearing the messages from Preborn asking listeners to join together to help save babies' lives through ultrasound, and you're not sure how to respond. Here's the story of one woman who took that step.
I heard about Mission Preborn just before December of last year and asked my husband if we could give at least $140. Just last week we received our packet. My husband came in the house and he was telling me, this is our preborn packet, the ultrasounds. I started crying without even seeing them. Not only were there 5 babies, but one of the moms was having twins. We were just elated for that.
For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and you'll receive a story and a picture of babies' lives that were spared. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your sponsorship goes to saving babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com.
I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The Palestinian Authority has long given lifetime stipends to the families of dead terrorists who successfully carry out terror attacks against Jews, and they've used aid from U.S. taxpayers to do it. A review of Palestinian aid was conducted by the Trump administration in light of the Taylor Force Act, which was proposed to stop this insanity. Following that review, President Trump has ordered that $200 million in economic aid be withheld from the Hamas-Palestinian Authority unitary government and redirected elsewhere. Good move, Mr. President.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
It's Friday. That means on Exploring the Word, it is Fire Away Friday at 3 o'clock Central Time, where Alex and I will join you as you call in and ask your question. This is Bert Harper. Get ready to fire away. Thank you for listening to Exploring the Word, especially on Fire Away Friday.
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fisher on American Family Radio.
And welcome back to the Friday edition of Focal Point. Fred Jackson sitting in for Bryan. Bryan enjoying the last day of vacation, getting revved up to come back here. Hey, listen, there'll be much more to talk about next week when he gets back as we motor on and head into September. And I guess the election campaigning is for November is officially underway now. We're going to hear from former President Barack Obama in a few moments. Yep, he entered the campaign trail today, gave a little speech at a university in Illinois, and he didn't waste any time of going out on the attack against President Trump and the Republicans. So we'll play a little bit of that in a few moments. But in the meantime, President Donald Trump was on the campaign trail last night. Now, he was out in Billings, Montana, and he was out there to support the GOP candidate who's taking on Democrat Senator Jon Tester there. But, and I'll tell you what, if you remember the campaign rallies that candidate Donald Trump had back in 2016, that enthusiasm for this man has not dwindled at all. This arena in Billings, Montana was absolutely packed last night. This crowd was wound up, and you're going to hear a little bit of this. He was interviewed by Fox last night in the midst of this whole rally there in Billings, Montana, and he was asked about his thoughts about the Kavanaugh hearings this week and how Judge Kavanaugh was treated by the Democrats. Cut one.
As you all saw this week, the Senate is now considering a truly exceptional nominee for the United States Supreme Court, Judge Brett Kavanaugh. And he's doing really well. But do you believe the anger and the meanness on the other side?
There you have it, the anger and meanness. You see, I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday. It seems the Democrats are either ignorant of or in denial of the reality of what's going on in this country. And in just a few minutes, I want to talk to you today about the latest economic numbers that came out. They're absolutely incredible what's going on. That is what's resonating with the people, not a lot of what the Democrats are talking about. Well, at this event last night, President Trump was also asked, as I say, he was being interviewed by Pete Hegseth of Fox News. And the interview was actually carried live right into that rally there. And he was also asked about the wall, which he promised that he would build during the election campaign, but he has been thwarted in that by Republicans, his own party, in the House. But let's have a listen to how he responded and listen to how the crowd was responding when he talked about his intention, his continued intention to build that wall on the Mexican border.
Another issue this crowd is often fired up about is the wall, a commitment you've made. Well, Congress hasn't been very good at funding that wall. You've got a budget showdown coming out this month. Would you shut down the government if wall funding is not included? So,
here's the thing. I have a lot of great Republicans. We need Republicans elected in the midterms. We have to get Republicans. And we are getting the wall done, but I've had so many people, good people, great people, they'd rather not do it before, they'd rather do it right after the election. They don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart. And my inclination, if it was up to me, I'd shut down government over border security.
There you have it. Like I told you, folks, it was like the campaign rallies of 2016, and the enthusiasm has not gone away. And I think if I was Democrat Senator Jon Tester, I might be a little bit worried. Now, he's the same senator, you may remember, that when President Trump nominated, I think it was Admiral Jackson to be the Surgeon General of the United States, it was Tester who came out with a bunch of anonymous sources saying that Jackson had an alcohol problem or something of that nature. So he is going to be remembered for that. It's a very close race there. I think it's a member of Congress that's taking on Democrat Senator Tester in there. By the way, President Trump is back on the campaign trail today. He's in Fargo, North Dakota, where another Heitkamp, Senator Heitkamp, Democrat Senator Heitkamp, is also in trouble there. She barely got elected the last time around. And so he's there. And basically, this is the way of President Trump's adding pressure. He'd like to add a couple of more Republican senators, certainly in November's election. And he deems Tester and Heitkamp as two vulnerable people. He's out campaigning in their backyard today. Well, as I mentioned a few moments ago, former President Barack Obama joined the campaign trail today, and don't make any mistake, he was at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. And he didn't waste any time on going on the attack against President Trump. I want you to listen to a little bit of a speech that was just a couple of hours ago now, a little bit of the speech, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more on what he had to say.
Over the past few decades, the politics of division and resentment and paranoia has unfortunately found a home in the Republican Party. This Congress has systematically attacked voting rights to make it harder for young people and minorities and the poor to vote. Handed out tax cuts without regard to deficits. Cast dozens of votes to take away health insurance from ordinary Americans. Embraced wild conspiracy theories like those surrounding Benghazi or my birth certificate, rejected science, rejected facts on things like climate change. I don't mean to pretend I I'm channeling Abraham Lincoln now, but that's not what he had in mind, I think, when he helped form the Republican Party.
So there you have it. That kind of vintage Barack Obama blaming everybody else. Kind of, one thing I found it interesting in that, he talked about the politics of division. Well, remember when he was in the White House, or leading up to the White House, and he was out giving speeches? Well, he talked about and mocking people who cling to their guns and their Bibles. That's kind of dividing this nation. He certainly had no problem dividing this nation. He mentioned Benghazi. It was proven what critics of Barack Obama's administration said were true. This was never about Benghazi was never about a video mocking Islam. That was proven to be the case in the investigation by Congress. And yet he had his people go out and lie about this in the days following Benghazi. Hey, listen, you know what? I think Barack Obama is trying to depend on people having short memories, but the reality is they don't. And they remember the years of Barack Obama. And they didn't want Hillary Clinton because they figured Hillary Clinton was going to be a continuation of those years. Oh, by the way, did you hear him mention about the economy? Oh, he's really worried about the economy and how terrible it is that the Republicans have given Americans a tax break. Hey, did you hear the latest stats out this morning? This is nonpartisan stats, folks. U.S. adds a strong 201,000 jobs. 201,000 jobs last month. And this just continues on and on. Unemployment rate 3.9%, an 18-year low. I'm reading from the Associated Press here, folks. Well, our own Dan Celia had something to say about the new economic numbers that are out there this morning. Maybe Barack Obama should listen to Dan Celia.
Folks, the economy can't get a whole lot better than this. But here's what the left doesn't get or understand. They can try all they want. They can keep doing all these antics and the protest and the idiotic statements they continue to make. We've got a left. We've got a Democrats that are going to be running on tax increases. Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous they are. But they're talking about running on tax increases. And trust me, folks, trust me on this. They're not talking about tax increase on the upper 2%. That's what they're going to frame it as. They want tax increases on everybody because they're not going to be able to continue their spending for their progressive agenda unless they get tax increases. So if you are voting in November, let's just boil it down and break it down to two very simple things. You can either vote for higher taxes or vote for taxes as we have them today, maybe even lower. They're your two choices. You don't have any other choice.
Well, there's Dan Celia, and we kind of trust Dan Celia's opinion on what's going on economically out there, and I guess people have to decide whether they trust our own Dan Celia and others who are out there. Like I said, I was just reading on this jobs report. I'm reading from the Associated Press, which is one of those liberal secular news agencies that's out there. It goes on to say in August, factories expanded at their quickest pace in 14 years. A manufacturing index compiled by a trade group reached its highest point since 2004. This is not an opinion, folks. It's the facts. Measures of new orders and production surged, and factories added jobs at a faster pace than in July. And normally, as we come to the end of summer, many factories are cutting back on people. And listen to this. On Thursday, the government said the number of people seeking unemployment benefits, a proxy for layoffs, amounted to just 203,000 last week, the fewest total in 49 years. Unemployment rate amongst Black Americans, among Hispanics, at historic lows under this president. How do you, if you're an honest Democrat, how do you then go out and campaign in this election saying how dire things are? When you have, again, this is nonpartisan stuff, folks. This is a report just out this morning confirming the trend that's been out there. Do you realize that right now, in our economy, there are more jobs open than people to fill them? That's the problem employers are having. All because of the economics of President Donald Trump. Well, we'll see what's going to happen. President Trump last night, very optimistic. The Republicans can do well, but he says people have to get out and vote. All right, much more ahead. Another part of the story this week is media coverage of all of this. We're going to be going to the MRC and talk to them about that. Dan Gaynor there right after the break. You're listening to Focal Point on a Friday. Fred sitting in for Bryan. We're back after the break.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. If you've been watching the U.S. Senate confirmation hearings for Judge Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court, you have undoubtedly been as appalled as I have been by the antics of many of the Democratic senators on the committee. It is bad enough that you've had over 70 protesters arrested for disruptive behavior in the hearing room, but the senators have behaved just as badly, maybe even worse. Why? Because they should know better. Senators are supposed to be the adults in the room. Clearly, at least two of the senators, Senator Harris of California and Senator Booker of New Jersey, are using the hearings to jumpstart their progressive liberal base as they prepare to run for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2020. Lost in all of this posturing and speech-making in the guise of questions is the fact that the senators are supposed to be about the people's business, seeking to confirm or deny confirmation to a distinguished federal appeals court judge who is being nominated to become the next Supreme Court justice. Judge Kavanaugh is supremely well qualified and fits the parameters President Trump promised he would appoint as the kind of judge that he would see on the court, a strict constructionist, original intent jurist. Knowing that they don't have the votes to defeat Kavanaugh, the Democrats have turned to obstruction, delay, and political theater. It is disgraceful behavior, and it makes a mockery of the process. As Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said in yesterday's hearings, these hearings have been compared to a circus. Senator Graham said he wanted to rise in defense of circuses. Circuses are entertaining, and they're fit for children to attend. These hearings are not entertaining and are not fit for children to attend. Amen, Senator Graham. These hearings disgrace the Democratic senators on the committee. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Bryan Fisher's columns at afa.net.
And welcome back to Focal Point. As we're trying to reach Dan Gaynor at the moment at the Media Research Center. I wanted to talk a little bit more about what former President Barack Obama had to say. Gave a speech at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. He actually was there to receive an award, Paul H. Douglas Award for Ethics in Government. Well, we could discuss that. Well, according to this report on his speech, the former president also went after President Trump's recent controversial statements about the Justice Department and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Here's a quote from the president today. "It should not be a partisan issue to say that we do not pressure the Attorney General or the FBI to use the criminal justice system as a cudgel to punish our political opponents." Let's talk for a moment about the dossier, about Hillary Clinton, about the alleged investigation by the FBI into Hillary Clinton, the whole email scandal. She kept a server at her private residence. And the justice system, the FBI, they interviewed her but didn't feel it was necessary to put her under oath. In fact, they wrote a conclusion of their investigation saying she didn't do anything wrong. She may have been sloppy, but she didn't do anything wrong. They wrote that prior to the end of the investigation. But we also now know that a dossier that was paid for, in at least a certain amount of it, was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. The Justice Department under Barack Obama, using the Justice Department and the FBI, used that dossier to go to the FISA court to get permission to spy on Donald Trump's people. And they didn't tell the FISA court that this dossier had been at least paid for in part by the Democratic Party. So for him to go up there today and talk about how terrible it is to use the criminal justice system on your political enemies, I'm sure people who really know the facts and have followed this story are just saying, what are you talking about? And what about your Justice Department, former President Barack Obama? All right, as promised, we're going to go right now to the Media Research Center, and our good friend Dan Gaynor's on the line. Dan, welcome to Focal Point.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be on, and it's good we picked another Slim Moon week.
I tell you what, this has been a week where, among other things, demonstrated just how left the mainstream media in this country has become. Let's start with their coverage of the op-ed in let's start with the New York Times, running an op-ed by somebody they agreed not to name, and they're mighty proud of doing that, Dan, the New York Times.
Well, that's because the New York Times is, in effect, conspiring with the deep state to undermine the President of the United States. And that's what they want to do. That's the New York Times is jockeying with CNN and the Washington Post to say which one of them qualifies as leader of the resistance. And so they all do kooky things. It's reached a point where it is hard to tell the opinion section from the news section. And, look, New York Times would never have done this during the Obama administration.
No.
When as soon as Trump took office, all the major news outlets, Washington Post, New York Times, and others, posted some, I guess you'd call it almost computer code, or basically a way of going onto their websites so you could contact them anonymously. So they did this to encourage all sorts of liberals who work for the government to undermine Trump. They didn't do that when Obama was there. They did it because they opposed Donald Trump. You saw the Washington Post change its motto to "Democracy dies in darkness." Let's be honest here. They view darkness as Donald Trump being president.
Yeah, and it's been amazing this week how they have not been held accountable. There was I was watching this morning how they're covering the Kavanaugh hearings, and the headline, I think the New York Times yesterday, was that Kavanaugh was dodging questions about things that he had written in memos when he was working for the Bush White House, and that he was dodging questions when he said, well, I can't comment on that because there may be court cases that come before me if I get to sit on the Supreme Court, and if I comment publicly on that right now, it would show prejudice in the case, and I have to recuse. And Judge Kavanaugh said, in his response, I'm just doing what other nominees to the Supreme Court have done. So the New York Times, I believe it was, that said the headline was he dodges these questions. But also somebody went out and did some research going back when Kagan was a nominee for the United States Supreme Court, and they basically said Kagan follows precedent in not answering the questions. And I thought,
of course,
another blatant example.
Well, there are times. You could go back to when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the nominee, and we were told by the major press that although she was liberal, she was very concerned with personal rights, and she would be more of a civil libertarian. No, she's not. She's doctrinaire liberal. She's as liberal as you can possibly get on the U.S. Supreme Court. And yet, of course, the press ran a campaign to get her on, and now they run campaigns to keep Republicans off. That's what this is all about. The press still wants Merrick Garland. And so unless Donald Trump nominates Merrick Garland or someone more blatantly liberal, and frankly, if he nominated some other person other than Merrick Garland, even if the person was a notorious liberal, the press would go, oh, I support that, I think, and then they kind of hesitate because they'd be afraid that Donald Trump was pulling a fast one on them. This is not journalism, this is activism.
Yeah, exactly. I want to get your comments on the behavior yesterday of Democrat Senator Cory Booker when he blatantly told a mistruth there for the American public that he was willing to break the rules of the Senate and disclose confidential memos, knowing all the time that they had been deemed non-confidential the night before. He knew going into those hearings that he was lying. Again, the media coverage of this, they just let him go because they want him to be a candidate for the Democrats for in 2020 for the President of the United States.
Well, bear in mind the Democratic bench for 2020 looks like the Bad News Bears bench, during the beginning of the season. It's not good. They've got Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Elizabeth Warren. It is slim pickings for Democrats, and the press knows this. So they don't want to make any of them look bad. They don't want to embarrass Kamala Harris when she refers to the Constitution as that book that Kavanaugh carries. Well, it's the Constitution of the United States. Sorry, lady. And they don't want to embarrass Cory Booker, even though he blatantly lies. But a few press outlets did actually call him out for this. Still, it comes down to he blatantly lied. He is grandstanding to boost his campaign. Most of the media will admit that much, but they don't want to call him out because they want to get a Democrat in the White House in 2020. This is not journalism. We've reached a point in America where almost the entirety of media, news and entertainment, they're not serving the function of the fourth estate. They serve the function under Trump of the fifth column.
You know, but Dan, honestly, we're talking to Dan Gaynor of the Media Research Center. Dan, honestly, I don't think the American public is fooled by the mainstream media anymore.
Well, I think some are and some aren't, but that infuriates the press. This is why Donald Trump infuriates the press. The press backed Donald Trump for a while when he first announced, and they did it because they thought he wasn't serious. They did it to divide and conquer the GOP. They figure he would never work together with whoever the nominee was, Jeb Bush, Cruz, whoever, and so they did it to destroy the GOP. And then when Donald Trump started winning, they realized that they created the journalistic version of the Frankenstein monster. And they were like, oh, we got to quick destroy him, and they couldn't. And so they've tried to overturn the election every moment since, not every day, but every moment. It's a 24-hour a day, 365 campaign to take down Donald Trump. That's what the op-ed's about. That's the Woodward book is about. That's what all these little tiny news stories that are often proven wrong are about. They don't care. They are running against Donald Trump.
It's quite amazing. What about, I wanted to ask you, because we're running out of time here, I want to ask you about the coverage that you've seen of the whole Nike issue and Colin Kaepernick, what you've seen in that.
But, I mean, of course, the media are pro-Kaepernick, and particularly the sports media. Colin Kaepernick hasn't played since 2016. He was benched for Blaine Gabbert in a game where he threw, going in three quarters, he threw for 4 yards. They had net passing yards of minus 27 yards in that game at that point when he got replaced. But he is an icon, only a star that the media spent all that year and ever since campaigning to get him on a team because he's woke. That's all they care about. They don't care about the sport. They care about lefty politics. And the sports media are the worst at this now.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, Dan, always a pleasure to talk with you. And we're thankful for the MRC. You're there monitoring all of this and telling the truth of the bias that's out there in our secular media. We sure appreciate what you do, Dan.
Well, thanks. We couldn't do it without you, and I really mean that, too.
All right. God bless you, Dan. You take care. Have a great weekend. That's Dan Gaynor from the Media Research Center. A terrific area, by the way, if you go to their website, and they do a great job of monitoring on a daily basis the bias that's in the media out there. You know, folks, I've been in the journalism business for a long, long time now, going back to, late 70s, and I have never in my life seen anything like this. The mainstream media, for the most part, has been liberal in their stance, but there was some discipline, some professionalism in the secular media when I started in this business, but it's gone. It is gone completely. Dan and others are exactly right. The people in the media, for the most part, are far left in their political ideology. They hate what Donald Trump stands for, and they are working with the Democrats to defeat him. But as we've said before, what these mainstream media don't understand is I still believe the most of the American people are standing behind what Donald Trump is trying to do. The election will tell the truth on that. All right, we're back here on a Friday edition of Focal Point right after the break. Fred sitting in for Bryan. Don't go away.
In a democratic republic such as America, the hard work of democracy is done by the people. At the Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C., September 21st through the 23rd, you'll be equipped to take up the battle for human life, strong religious liberty, and thriving families by strong conservative leaders. The Values Voter Summit is sponsored in part by AFA Action. Visit valuesvotersummit.org to register and obtain more information about the summit. That's valuesvotersummit.org.
Hello, my name is Wesley Wildman, Director of Outreach for AFA. Please join me along with AFR host Bryan Fisher and AFA Vice President Ed Vitagliano for our In God We Trust Town Hall meeting Tuesday, October the 2nd at 6:30 p.m. at the Crown Plaza Hotel, 600 Metro Place North in Dublin. We hope to meet you and encourage you. We are limited to 500 people, so please register now at afa.net/Dublin. That's afa.net/Dublin.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Bryan Fisher.
Bryan Fisher.
And welcome back to Focal Point. Fred Jackson sitting in for Bryan today. As we mentioned a few moments ago, President Donald Trump at the moment giving a speech in Fargo, North Dakota. And the speech, just talking with our producer Jeff here, the speech that he's giving today and has been giving, much like the campaign speeches back in 2016.
Yeah.
And basically he's just rehearsing what he promised back in 2016 is what he's attempting to do. And we've just been talking about the latest economic figures. They're absolutely incredible. I don't know as a Democrat how you run against that when you have a situation now where there are more jobs open than there are people to fill them, and that if you're healthy and able to work, there's no excuse right now why you can't get a job. Employers in some cases are finding it difficult to find people to work. They're not laying people off because they're afraid if they do, they won't be able to get enough people back in to fill those factories, et cetera, et cetera. So there he is. He's out there. He's talking about he wants to build a wall. There's been some money given him by Congress, and there's been some activity on the Mexican border wall in California. I believe they've been able to do something there. But it's a far stretch, I think, from the $25 billion I think he's been asking for. And that's a case where he's run into problems with his own party. And I think the voters out there are going to hold some Republicans accountable in this coming election for not supporting the president and the things that he wants to do, especially when it comes to the border issue. That has been, I think, one of the key compromises. Now, when it comes to tax reform, there is no question about it. Part of the economic report that came out this morning, the reason why manufacturing is doing so well is people are going out, They're spending money, for instance, buying new cars. They're going, the report said, going to restaurants more. That all involves people working, getting out to work. People are confident. Consumer confidence is up. And so when you listen to Democrats who are going to be out campaigning over the next 8 weeks, when you listen to Democrats say that people are suffering in this country, you know, I have no doubt, and I feel for people who may have disabilities and can't get work. I think we live, hopefully, in a country that still shows compassion for those who can't work. And I'm also thinking of people who have been in long-time jobs in certain areas of employment that perhaps because of the way the economy is evolving, that there aren't the jobs that they used to be. And so older workers may be finding it difficult to find work. I understand all that. As I say, where I get upset is with people who are young and able, and they just don't want to work. They wanted to continue to live off the American taxpayer. I have no time for that. And I think in at least some states, there is a continuing push for welfare reform, and that basically, if you're healthy and can work, you're not going to be able to stay on food stamps forever. I'm glad we live in a country that has those kind of social programs to help people who are really in need. But I think there needs to be a means test. But that's something the liberals have fought against for years, a means test to prove that you actually need those things that are given to folks that really do need the help. Well, another story, and we mentioned it briefly in our conversation with Dan Gaynor from MRC, and that is the controversy this week over Nike picking Colin Kaepernick as one of their poster people, and literally as part of the ad campaign where he's being featured. I think it was in New York the other day or San Francisco, a big picture of Colin Kaepernick. And the first ad, actually, I think was shown on television or some television stations last night. But there has been a huge response, negative response to that as well. Even CNN writing a story this week saying Nike's decision to use Colin Kaepernick as the face of its latest advertising campaign has some sports fans burning with rage. People upset with the move have started setting fire to their sneakers and sportswear to protest Nike using Kaepernick to promote the 30th anniversary of its Just Do It advertising campaign. You know, Jeff, people were already upset with the NFL, the way that they've been handling this whole idea of allowing players to kneel during the national anthem and show disrespect for the national anthem, show disrespect for our flag. Supposedly there was a solution to all of this. Players who wanted to do that had to stay in the dressing room. But we've already seen that broken. And now you have a major sportswear producer basically rewarding Kaepernick for what he did. And he really started this whole campaign. Well, last night, we shouldn't be surprised by that, during his campaigning in Billings, Montana, President Trump once again called out Nike for picking Kaepernick and basically celebrating his protest, his anti-patriotism. Cut two.
I don't like what Nike did. I don't think it's appropriate what they did. I honor the flag. I honor our national anthem. And most of the people in this country feel the same way. They feel the same way, Peter.
Well, there you have it. There's those cheers again. As I said, this arena in Billings, Montana was packed, much like the arenas he packed out during the election campaign in 2016. And there you heard the response when he started talking about Nike. I think this is a company that's going to suffer badly for being politically correct. And I don't have any numbers in front of me to back up what I'm going to say, but I got this feeling a lot of folks who are really dedicated sports fans, and this goes beyond football, it goes to other sports, because Nike supplies sportswear for a lot of different sports. I think they probably, maybe tennis or whatever the case may be. As you said, I'm not into all sports. Hockey I am, but not other sports. But you know, people get upset when a company like that, they can't understand why you're putting your foot into the political arena. And this is a political issue. And why they would take stands with somebody who has taken a stand against being a patriot for this country. Now, we learned in the last 24 hours that one of those groups reacting to this is actually a Christian college in Missouri. And let me just read you this story here. A private Christian college in Point Lookout, Missouri, vowed to remove all uniforms featuring the Nike logo after the brand's ad with Colin Kaepernick was unveiled this week. This is what the president of the College of the Ozarks, which is a terrific college, by the way, in Missouri, the president of the College of the Ozarks, his name is Jerry C. Davis. He said, if Nike is ashamed of America, we are ashamed of them. And in a statement to the Associated Press, he went on to say, we also believe that those who know what sacrifice is all about are more likely to be wearing a military uniform than an athletic uniform. So that story is out there. Perhaps, Jeff, I think this was from CBS News, and perhaps we can post that on the Facebook page for Focal Point, and so that maybe you can send a little note to the president of the College of the Ozarks there in Missouri, Jerry C. Davis, and congratulate them, that Christian college, for taking this kind of stand. And I think more and more people will do it. As I say, there's this other story from CNN of people openly, I guess, taking videos of them burning their Nike equipment. It's a way to fight back against the political decision that Nike has made. So, I think Nike is going to pay a price for this. I really do. I think people are fed up with this kind of PC nonsense that's out there. And I think you're going to see a swing of the pendulum. I think this election in November is going to be a bit of a barometer as to where we are as a country. If President Trump, and I know he's not up for re-election, but he is going to be a focal point of this election. If people support what he is doing, and he's out there on the campaign trail trying to encourage people to go out and vote in this midterm, because historically speaking, in midterms, the party in power, the people who normally would support them tend to stay home and they lose seats in the House in particular. We've seen that over and over and over again. But he is out there encouraging people. He's very popular. And the Republican Party need to let him go and do his thing out there. But Republicans are going to have to stand with him if they want to maintain power. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. Seems to be more of a concern, at least in the polls, about the House. The Senate, there is a belief that the Republicans may even pick up a few seats in the Senate. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I think, what the president is trying to do right now is use these examples, tell people, here was my agenda in 2016. Here's what we've been able to accomplish in the first year and 8 months or so. And we need Republicans. He said that again last night. He's going to repeat it over and over again, that Republicans have to get out and support those Republicans. It was interesting. He was asked, and I think we played this a while ago, whether he's willing to shut down the government right now this fall with regards to getting more funding for the wall. He hesitated on that, and I think it's a good political move to wait till after the midterms to take that kind of stand. But I think if we get through the midterms and you see Republicans maintaining power, I think the president will be willing to do that because he will have that confidence, that political confidence to take that kind of stand. All right, it's been a real joy to be with you the last 3 days, filling in for Bryan Fisher. As I say, he'll be back on Monday. We hope he's had a great vacation, all rested up and ready to go when he returns on Monday at 1 o'clock Central here on Focal Point. Meantime, you folks have a great weekend. Lord willing, we'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
1milliondads.com is